Barrier games are a common staple in any speech and language therapy activity pack because they're such a great excuse to practice understanding language, communicating, and also problem solving and figuring things out. Basically, barrier games cover a huge variety of communication and language skills, and they can be really fun, and you can play them in a variety of creative ways. And so in this video, I want to share with you the basic rundown of how to play a barrier game, then some creative variations, and thirdly, a rundown of some of the language skills that barrier games help you practice. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So the basic principle with a barrier game is that you and the child are aiming to produce the same thing, but you can't see what each other are doing. There's a barrier between you. And so your kind of basic setup would be maybe a colouring in sheet with the same colour pens for each of you. So you'd each have the same picture to colour in and the same set of pens. And then you, as the adult giving the directions, would talk through what you're doing as you do it. So you might say, I'm colouring the fin blue and I'm giving the fish a yellow eye and I'm adding some purple seaweed in the background. And your hope is that the child will reproduce something very similar to what you've coloured in or drawn yourself because they've been listening carefully to what you've been saying. You, as the adult, can adjust the complexity of your instructions and how much information you give at once, depending on the child's skills. So you might even give them lots of visual clues and say, red pen for the fin, or you might use it within a sentence. Oh, I'm gonna use the red pen to colour in this top fin and maybe the blue pen for the bottom fin. So you can see you as the adult can adjust the complexities, the demands of this barrier game just by how you're describing what you're doing. It doesn't have to be colouring in. If you've got that barrier between you and you've got two sets of something, then you could do any number of things. You could have Play-Doh for your barrier game, or you could do some Duplo constructions. The main thing is you need to make sure that what you have on your side of the barrier is the same as what the child has. Now, there are some creative variations to this if you don't have a barrier, and often I hear from people who say, yeah, I think barrier games are a great idea, but I don't actually, it's really hard for me, in my mobile work when I'm traveling around different schools to actually set up the barrier. So here's a few suggestions for how you can still get the advantages, the basic principle of a barrier game, which is basically you talking through instructions for the child to listen to and reproduce something. So one way that you could do this is you could have your colouring in sheet already coloured in and hidden inside a big envelope, and you can tell the child, I've already coloured in my sheet and I'm going to look at it and tell you what I see. I wonder if you can make it the same. So you don't have to have a barrier because you can just hold your pre-coloured sheet in front of you, and clipboards are incredibly useful for this. I really like to use my iPad for barrier games. On that, I have preloaded a whole bunch of photos that I've taken of Potato Head wearing all manner of fancy costumes, and then I will give the child all of the Potato Head pieces and describe my picture, and as they build it at the end, I can show them on my tablet and say, hey, do they look the same? What's really fun about this as well is that you can start to take turns. So you can hand the tablet over to the child and you can be in charge of the potato head pieces. And then the child's practicing different skills. They're practicing giving instructions, the expressive language, and they're also practicing noticing what you're doing. And really, we're getting into the third part of this video, which is the variety of skills that barrier games can help your child to practice. So from the beginning, we can think about how you can practice specific language skills, specific concepts. So if you're drawing a picture, they might be listening to language around size and shape. If you're colouring in, they might be listening to colour words and starting to also listen out for multi-step instructions. So you might start by saying, colour the front door green. Later, you might say, colour the front door green and the roof red. So there's more steps to that instruction, so they have to hold on to more. So really, it's more of an auditory processing challenge for them, which is just a articulation challenge for me. Prepositions are also a really useful one to practice within this. If you're drawing a picture or if you're building something out of Duplo together, then being able to say underneath, below, on top, next to, all of those kind of position words are really useful for this, and you can check out my video on prepositions as well if that's useful to you. And barrier games really help a child to develop their social communication skills, to be able to manage the problem of when it goes wrong, if there's a breakdown, and also help them manage their own levels of understanding. So to develop their own independent learning skills by checking if they've understood, asking for clarification, oh, I'm not sure about that last bit, or asking for repetition, please can you say that again? And all of these skills are such an essential part of learning within a group, learning within a classroom, and also it's such an essential skill in the workplace. And this is why barrier games is that staple in speech and language therapy, because if you find something that's pitched at the right level for your child, that's interesting to them, then you can practice all manner of useful language and communication skills within this. So I would encourage you to dig in, choose some way that you might like to try a barrier game with a child that you know, and have fun together. Try it out. Maybe you want to take turns being the person in charge, giving the instructions, the other person listening, and let me know how you get on, because every tiny thing that you are having a go at doing is a step in the right direction. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have fun with those barrier games. I'll see you next time. Bye.